I found out because of a stupid sound effect. Not screaming. Not some dramatic phone call. Not lipstick on a collar or a hotel receipt hidden in a pocket. A damn notification sound. I was in the kitchen rinsing coffee mugs before work when her phone lit up on the table beside me. I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear I wasn't. For years I'd been the guy who laughed when friends checked their partners' phones. I used to say, "If you need to investigate someone, the relationship's already dead." Then I heard it. Not her normal message tone. A soft little chime I'd never heard before. The screen flashed for maybe 2 seconds. "Matthew, still thinking about last night, smiley face." Then it disappeared. I froze with wet hands over the sink. My girlfriend Emily and I had been together for almost 5 years. We lived together. Shared bills. Shared routines. Shared grocery lists and lazy Sunday mornings. Life felt ordinary. Safe. I thought I knew her completely. And for a few seconds, staring at that black screen, I had this weird feeling in my chest. Like reality had stepped sideways without asking me. I kept rinsing the same mug over and over like my brain hadn't caught up yet. Maybe I misread it. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe last night meant something harmless. Friends, work, something I didn't understand. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was denial so strong it felt physical. Emily was in the bedroom getting ready. I could hear her humming faintly, that same tune she always hummed when she was choosing outfits like the day was going to reward her effort. I looked at her phone again. The screen stayed dark. And I did something I had never done in 5 years. I picked it up. No passcode change. That was the first strange thing I noticed. She'd been more protective of it lately, but still. I opened it. There was nothing obvious at first. No suspicious apps. No hidden folders screaming guilt. Then I noticed a dating app icon I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. Not because I understood everything yet, but because some part of me already did. From the bedroom, Emily called out casually, asking if I'd seen her charger. I said nothing. I just stared at the screen, realizing my normal life had already started collapsing without making a sound. I told myself I was going to close it. Just put the phone down, walk away, and ask her directly like a normal person. That would have been the healthy thing to do. The grown-up thing. But my hands didn't listen to that version of me anymore. I opened the app. And everything went quiet in a way I can't really explain. Not silence in the room, silence in my head, like my thoughts all stepped back at once. It wasn't just installed. It was active. Her profile popped up almost immediately. Emily. My Emily. Different pictures though, some I had never seen. One of them she was wearing a red dress I didn't recognize at all. Smiling like she was someone I'd never met. Then messages. Dozens. Some flirty. Some explicit. Some planning meetups. And then I saw it. Matthew. The same name from the notification. My throat tightened so hard I actually swallowed wrong. I scrolled without thinking, like my body was moving before my mind agreed. Dates. Times. Messages exchanged while she was sitting next to me on the couch pretending to be tired from work. I heard the bedroom door open behind me. "Hey," she said lightly. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. That pause felt like it lasted a full minute, even though it was probably just a couple of seconds. My thumb was still on the screen, frozen over her messages with Matthew, like if I moved it everything would become irreversible. "I asked what you're doing," she repeated, a little sharper this time. I turned slowly. She was standing there barefoot, hair half done, wearing one of my old hoodies like she always did on lazy mornings. It looked so normal. So painfully normal that for a second my brain tried to reject everything I'd just seen. I held up the phone. No words at first. I couldn't trust my voice. Her eyes dropped to the screen. And I saw it. That microsecond shift. The recognition. The calculation. The panic she tried to bury too late. "Where did you get that?" she said too fast. That was it. Not, "What is that?" Not confusion. "Where did you get that?" My chest went hollow. "So it's real?" She didn't answer immediately, and that silence said more than anything else ever could. She stepped forward like she could physically close the distance between us and erase what I knew. But nothing about me was staying in place anymore. "I can explain," she said. I actually laughed, and I hated myself for it the moment it came out. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief spilling over the edge. "Explain what exactly?" I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else in the room. She took the phone from my hand, almost instinctively, like removing the evidence would rewind time. "It's not what you think," she said, and I swear I've heard that sentence in movies my whole life and never understood how empty it sounds until that moment. I asked her how long. She hesitated. That hesitation again. Then she said, "A few months." A few months. I sat down without meaning to. My legs just gave up. I remember staring at the floor and thinking how ridiculous it was that everything still looked the same: the table, the coffee mugs, her charger on the counter she had just asked about. She started talking faster now, explaining that it was just talking, just attention, nothing serious. But I had already seen the messages. I had already seen her planning nights with someone else while coming home and kissing me like I was the only person in her world. I asked her to show me everything. Not because I wanted more pain, but because some part of me still couldn't accept that what I had seen was the full picture. Like there had to be a missing page that would make it all less real. She hesitated again. Then she said I was invading her privacy. That hit harder than anything else so far. Privacy. While I was standing in the same apartment we built together, holding the evidence of her lying to my face for months. I told her I had seen Matthew. Her expression changed immediately. Not guilt. Not sadness. Fear. She started talking faster, saying it was complicated, that she didn't mean for it to go that far, that she was confused lately. Confused. I remember asking her one question. "Did you love him?" She didn't answer. That silence again. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it felt like something inside me finally snapped cleanly, like a rope pulled too tight and suddenly giving up. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back without even thinking. And that was the first moment I realized I didn't want to be touched by her anymore. I walked into the kitchen because I didn't know where else to go. It sounds pathetic now, but I stood there staring at the kettle like it might give me instructions on what to do with my life next. Everything felt unreal, like I was inside someone else's argument. Emily followed me. She kept talking, trying to soften it, saying she felt lonely sometimes, that I was always busy, that she didn't plan for anything to happen with Matthew. Like it just drifted there by accident. But every sentence sounded rehearsed, like she had already explained it to herself 100 times before I ever found out. I asked her if she had slept with him. That question changed the air instantly. She didn't answer at first, just looked at the floor. And that was enough. My stomach turned, not from surprise anymore, but from clarity. The kind that doesn't need confirmation because it already knows. I remember gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles hurt. She finally said, "It was only twice." Only twice. I looked at her and felt something cold spread through me, not anger exactly, more like emotional exhaustion hitting its limit all at once. I don't even remember sitting down, but somehow I was. Emily kept talking like she could rebuild reality with enough words. She said she was sorry. She said she felt guilty every day. She said she didn't know how to stop it once it started. I remember staring at her mouth moving and realizing I wasn't actually hearing her anymore. It was like her voice was coming from underwater. Then she said something that stuck in me. "I still love you." That's when I finally looked up properly. Because that didn't make sense in my head. Not after the messages, not after Matthew, not after everything I had seen with my own eyes. I asked her what love meant then. I asked her how she could say that while building a second life behind my back. She started crying at that point. Not dramatic sobbing, just tears falling like she was exhausted rather than devastated. Part of me almost reacted to that. The old part of me. The one that used to comfort her, hold her, fix things. But it felt distant now. Like I was remembering someone else's instincts. I told her I needed space. And when I said it, I realized I didn't mean space. I meant distance from everything we were. She didn't leave right away. Instead, she sat on the edge of the couch like she was waiting for me to change my mind. Like this was just another argument we could talk through until it softened into something livable again. The silence between us started filling the apartment in a way I'd never noticed before. It wasn't empty. It was crowded with everything unsaid. At one point she asked if we could try therapy. Like the word itself could patch the hole she had just carved into everything. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because I genuinely couldn't imagine a version of us that still existed on the other side of what I knew. She kept repeating that she made a mistake, that she was lost, that Matthew didn't mean anything like that. But I kept thinking about the app. The photos. The planning. The consistency. Nothing about it looked accidental. Eventually she stopped talking. Just sat there, staring at her hands. And I remember thinking how strange it was that betrayal doesn't always end with screaming. Sometimes it ends with two people sitting in the same room, slowly realizing there's no shared language left. She finally left that night. Not in a dramatic storm out. No slammed doors. Just quiet movements, like she was trying not to disturb the version of life that used to exist in the apartment. She packed a bag slowly, almost carefully. As if choosing clothes could somehow influence the outcome of what had already happened. I didn't help her. I didn't stop her either. At one point she paused in the hallway and asked if I wanted her to stay somewhere else. For a while. Like we were negotiating logistics instead of the collapse of a relationship. I said yes without emotion. When the door closed, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like a sound that removed something from the room that couldn't be put back. I stood there for a long time afterward, just listening to the absence. Then I went through everything again. Messages. Photos. Names. Times. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because my brain refused to accept that my life had been real right up until it suddenly wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, trying to understand how someone can live beside you while building an entirely different truth. The next few days didn't feel like time was moving normally. I kept waking up expecting to hear her in the kitchen, or feel her shift in bed beside me, and then remembering in the worst possible way that there was nothing to wake up into anymore. She texted once. Just one message. I hope you're okay. I didn't reply. I stared at it for a long time, like if I studied it hard enough I might find the version of her I used to know hidden between the words. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How loud the apartment actually was without her. How every sound echoed longer than it should. How my routines had her fingerprints all over them. Even making coffee felt wrong. Friends started asking where she was. I kept saying, "We're dealing with things," because I didn't have a simpler explanation that didn't sound like my life had cracked open. At night, the worst part wasn't anger. It was replaying normal moments, laughing on the couch, grocery shopping, small kisses in passing, and wondering how many of those were happening while she was already someone else's girlfriend in secret. That question didn't leave me alone. It just got quieter in the background. Eventually, I told my sister. I didn't want to. That was the strange part. It wasn't shame exactly. It was the feeling that saying it out loud would make it permanent in a way I couldn't undo. But she noticed something was off before I even explained it. I think people who know you well can read the silence better than the words. When I finally told her, I didn't go into detail at first. Just said Emily had been seeing someone else. That there were dating apps. That it wasn't just emotional. My sister didn't interrupt. She just listened. And then she said something simple. You don't have to carry all of it alone. I didn't know how to respond to that. Because I had been carrying it alone already, even when Emily was still in the apartment. I just hadn't realized it. That night I almost called Emily. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe? Or disbelief trying to reassert itself. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there with my phone in my hand, realizing how easy it is to reach for someone who already stopped being where you left them. A week later, she came back for the rest of her things. I wasn't expecting it to hit me the way it did. I thought I had already gone through the worst part, the discovery, the confrontation, the leaving. But seeing her again in that apartment made everything feel freshly torn open. She looked different. Not physically. Just smaller somehow. Like the version of her I had built in my head had finally stopped overlaying reality. We didn't hug. We didn't argue at first either. She moved around the bedroom quietly, collecting clothes, small items, things that used to feel shared but now felt like evidence of a life that no longer matched. At one point she stopped and asked if I was okay. I almost laughed again, but I didn't have the energy for it. I don't know, I said honestly. She nodded like she understood, but I could tell she didn't really. Before leaving, she hesitated at the door. Like there was still something she wanted to say that wouldn't fit inside apology. Instead, she just said my name softly, then left it hanging. The door closed behind her, and this time it didn't feel like shock. It felt final in a way I couldn't argue with anymore. After she left again, the apartment didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. It felt like a place where something important had already finished happening, and I was just the last person to notice. I started packing away things we had bought together. Not everything, just enough so I didn't have to see reminders everywhere I turned. A mug she liked. A blanket she always stole. Little objects that suddenly felt heavier than they should. But the strange part was that I wasn't angry anymore. It had burned out into something quieter. Not acceptance, not peace, just exhaustion with emotional spikes I couldn't sustain. Sometimes I'd catch myself replaying her words. I still love you. It didn't mean anything. I was confused. And I'd wonder if she believed those things when she said them, or if they were just ways to survive the moment. At night I started sleeping better, but dreaming worse. Dreams where everything was normal again, and then I'd wake up with that brief, cruel relief that it wasn't real, followed immediately by remembering that what was real was worse. There was no dramatic healing happening. Just slow distance growing between me and the life I thought I had. Months passed, but there's no clean point where I can say I moved on. It didn't work like that. It was more like the story stopped being sharp enough to cut me every day. I still think about her sometimes, not with longing exactly, but with this strange sense of confusion about how someone can sit next to you for years and still build a second life you never touched. I never contacted Matthew. I don't even know if I want to know who he really was in all of this. Part of me suspects it wouldn't change anything anyway. Emily sent a couple more messages after that first one. I didn't respond to any of them. Eventually they stopped. What I learned isn't dramatic or wise. It's just uncomfortable. Trust isn't loud when it breaks. There's no warning sound that tells you it's already gone. Sometimes it looks like normal mornings. Shared coffee mugs. Quiet routines. Familiar voices asking about chargers in the next room. And you don't notice the fracture until you're already holding the pieces, trying to remember when exactly the glass started cracking.